Every prisoner breaks. Every one of them, on every world I've taken. Then you haven't met one with nothing left to lose.
Warlord Krovan Dask had broken 40 worlds, and he had done it the same way every time. Not with orbital cannons, though he had those in numbers that could turn a moon to gravel. Not with legions, though his armies darkened every sky he chose to darken. He did it with silence rooms, one prisoner at a time, a single leader stripped of rank and dignity until the resistance cracked open from the inside and told him everything he needed, and the rest of the war simply stopped mattering. It had never once failed. Krovan had stopped believing it could. His officers told stories about it in the mess halls, half in awe, half in fear, the way soldiers speak of a weapon they have never seen misfire. The human soldier they dragged into a silence room on the 40th world had a name, Sergeant Daniel Reyes, though Krovan never bothered learning it. Reyes had commanded the last defended sector of a colony that had held out 4 months longer than any world had a right to. He arrived in chains, one arm broken, a wound crusted along his jaw, and he did not look at Krovan the way the others did. He did not look at Krovan at all. "You will speak," Krovan told him, through the translator collar bolted to Reyes's throat. "They all do." Reyes said nothing. He sat on the cold floor of the cell, back straight, eyes closed, and breathed like a man meditating in a garden rather than bleeding in a cage. Krovan had methods for this. He tried them all, in the order that had worked on 40 worlds before this one. He starved the man for 6 days, and Reyes drank his water in silence and ate nothing, and said nothing about the hunger at all. He played the recorded screams of Reyes's own soldiers, captured elsewhere on the same battlefield, and Reyes listened with his eyes open and his jaw tight, and still did not speak. He brought in a translator fluent in every dialect of the colony's dying language, thinking perhaps the man simply could not be understood in the tongue Krovan had given him, and still nothing changed. He threatened the colony's remaining civilians, the ones huddled in the shelters Reyes had once commanded, and Reyes looked at him then, finally, directly, and said 4 words. "You'll do that regardless." Then he closed his eyes again. Krovan had broken warlords, priests, mothers, children. He had never once sat across from someone who simply declined to be afraid. By the second week, Krovan stopped sending guards to relay reports and came to the silence room himself, at odd hours, unannounced, the way he used to visit his most stubborn conquests in the old days when the work still felt like work rather than ritual. Reyes was always in the same position, sitting, breathing, present in a way that unsettled Krovan more than screaming ever had. "Every one of them breaks," Krovan said one night, more to himself than to the prisoner. "Everyone has something they cannot lose." Reyes opened his eyes. For the first time in 3 weeks, he spoke without being asked. "I already lost it," he said. "My wife. My son. Before you ever took this world. There was a bombing run 6 months before you landed, and it wasn't even yours. It was ours, aimed wrong." He let that sit in the cold air between them. "You keep threatening to take something from me. I don't have anything left for you to take. That's not defiance. It's just arithmetic." Krovan did not sleep that night, or the next. He had spent 300 years believing that fear was the only current that mattered, that every creature in the galaxy could be reduced to the thing it was most afraid to lose. He had built an empire on that arithmetic. He had never once accounted for a man who had already paid the entire debt in advance, with nothing left on the ledger for anyone to collect. His officers noticed the change before he admitted it to himself. The silence rooms across the occupied sectors grew quieter, not from prisoners breaking faster, but from Krovan visiting them less, ordering fewer sessions, standing longer in doorways before turning away. His generals began to whisper that the warlord who had never lost his nerve in 40 campaigns was losing something else entirely, something with no name in their language. On the 22nd day, Krovan came to the silence room and, for the first time, sat down across from Reyes instead of standing over him. "What do you want?" Krovan asked. "Not a threat. A question." "To bury them," Reyes said. "That's all I ever wanted." You took a colony. You didn't take that. Croven sat with that for a long time. The next morning, he ordered the sector's remaining civilians released under armistice, a decision his own command staff would spend years failing to understand, and he personally authorized transport for Sergeant Daniel Reyes to the ash fields outside the colony's northern ridge, where 2 markers had stood untouched since long before the invasion began. Reyes knelt there for an hour. Croven stood at a distance and did not interrupt him once. "You could have broken me on day 1, Croven finally said when Reyes rose. "Told me anything. Ended it." "I know," Reyes said. "But you were never asking the right question. You wanted my fear. I didn't have any left to give you. Everyone assumes silence means something is being hidden." He looked back once at the 2 markers in the ash. Sometimes it just means there's nothing left to say. Croven Dask ended his campaign on that world within the month, the first war he had ever concluded without a single silence room producing a single confession. Historians on both sides would spend generations arguing about why. Only 2 people ever knew the true answer, and neither of them saw any reason to explain it to an empire that had built itself on the belief that everyone, eventually, had something left to lose.